Welcome back to CrossWURDz, everybody, right here on WURD. And it's about that time. It's time for From the Press Box with our favorite guy, none other than the Tyler Byrum. Happy Friday, Junior Tyler. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing good, Kayla. I imagine I'm like most Philadelphians right now when it's just so hard to tell what day of the week it is with the World Series going on. I don't know which days to call out of work. I don't know which days to not be active at work. I've lost track of everything. So I know we're near the weekend.
Exactly. We're near the weekend, and it's pandemania out here. It really is. It really is. But I know that we have a lot to cover in a
Mhm.
little bit of time. So let's get started with your first topic on tonight.
Yeah, so the first thing we kind of need to talk about, and it's never an easy topic to talk about, but Kyrie Irving went out and did something dumb again, which he's done multiple times throughout his career, and it's typically dumb stuff he's done off the court. So late last week, I think it was actually Thursday, so the day of our last show, we just didn't get into it. Kyrie Irving shared a tweet that linked to a movie. To not further promote the movie, I'm not going to necessarily say what the name is. People listening, if you're really interested, you can go out and find the articles and look it up on your own time. But it's a movie that's been constantly referred to as an anti-Semitic movie, so an anti-Jewish movie, and lacks historical accuracies when trying to portray the story as a truth. So those are two major red flags. And Kyrie Irving being a guy of prominence, one of the top players in the NBA, a guy that's garnered a huge social media following and has honestly been kind of one of those people that has been I don't know if he's self-described himself as this or some people have just kind of latched onto him as kind of a contrarian, a guy that kind of goes against the grain, thinks differently. But he shared that on Twitter, and I think it was promoting an Amazon link to the movie. Um, and on top of that, just in the movie, there's several anti-Semitic tropes. The big overarching thing of it is that I think the reason why he said he shared it was that anti-Black racism can be traced back to old Jewish texts back in the biblical days. And that's something that there's no historical evidence to be able to support that. Um, but it's just kind of one of those controversial things that have been put out there. And the biggest thing about it is Kyrie hasn't necessarily come out and denounced what he did. He hasn't apologized for what he did. Um, the other day, last night actually, he and the team sent out a statement and he basically said he took responsibility, but he never apologized for doing it. This past week has been something crazy for people that have covered the Nets. I know some people that cover the Nets, and those press conferences have been wild. The ones that Irving have been in, the ones that Irving hasn't been a part of because the team is trying to give him a break from all the media firestorm that's come his way. He's denied that he's anti-Semitic, and he went as far to claim like just because he tweeted it doesn't mean he was promoting the movie. He was trying to provoke thought about saying like, oh, everything we know isn't necessarily what's been told to us. We need to look at other sources. And while he may be accurate in that assessment, the movie that he promoted, and again, if he doesn't want to say he promoted it, the movie that he shared on social media as something that could be a conveyor of the truth is something that has been widely regarded as something that is not the truth, if that makes sense. So his argument, there may be some argument there, but the means that he did it and to the extreme of putting something like this out there is ridiculous to me. He made the case in his press conference. He's like, oh, I didn't do anything illegal, so it's not that bad. He went as far to say on his, let me pull up his thing. I embrace all walks of life. You see it on my platforms. I talk to all races, all cultures, all religions. And my response to be, it's not about educating yourself on what Semitism is or what anti-Semitism is. It's really about being aware root words, where these come from, and understanding that this is African heritage that also belonging to the people. So again, I think the dangerous thing about this is I think what he was trying to do wasn't necessarily wrong, just the manner that he did it, using the widely regarded anti-Semitic movie as a way to present an argument is not the way to do it. And he didn't have the forethought. He didn't have the uh, intellectual kind of understanding of this happening. And then the biggest thing is that like we all make mistakes. We all sometimes say things that we shouldn't say, and it may not be delivered the way that we were intending in our head. But the fact that he just hasn't come out and he said he took responsibility, I don't think anyone in their right mind would say that he has taken responsibilities for his action. He hasn't come out on a press conference and been like, hey, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done this. I'm sorry to anyone that I've offended. I mean, that's not going to make things much better in the long run, but it's definitely not making it worse. And right now what he's doing is it seems like he's digging a hole. More things about it is that recently he's reposted stuff from an old clip of InfoWars founder and famous conspiracy theorist Alex Jones, who I believe many of us know throughout his just kind of media history and what he's done. Of course, a lawsuit against him for being a conspiracy theorist against the Sandy Hook massacre several years ago. His defamation against the families there. He just finished that lawsuit and is having to pay millions and millions of dollars to those families. And the one thing that he promoted was the New World Order, which for people that are in the conspiracy world kind of understand, you might have heard thrown across news organizations from time to time. But if you combine all that together and think about it, at the root of that conspiracy, it basically alleges that Jewish people are running the world and maneuvering political individuals and maneuvering policies like chess pieces so that Jewish people can maintain power. So when you combine that comment that he said, I believe it was on Instagram several weeks ago, and then him sharing this movie on Twitter within the span of a couple of weeks, it's hard for you to get plausible deniability. You know, you can't be like, oh, like that kind of goes out the window when there's things that are so related and so many things that are just at the root, like racist towards racist is probably not the right word, but what's the correct term? But condemning Jewish people and basically saying bad things about Jewish people, being anti-Semitic. And of course, this being on the heels of the Kanye West tweets that he's put out over the last several weeks that got his account suspended from Twitter. So a lot of drama going on with Kyrie. He hasn't accepted responsibility for it, as I've said. The team has yet to really punish him yet, and I'm a little surprised, especially an organization like the NBA that tries to be at the forefront of social issues and tries to shut this stuff down. NBA hasn't punished him yet. I don't know if something's going to happen. Adam Silver just released a statement earlier today, basically saying he's disappointed in what Kyrie has done, and that he's going to be speaking with him this week. Adam Silver is Jewish, the commissioner of the NBA. So there's that there. Of course, there's a problem of suspending Kyrie Irving because the support that he's developed over the past several years and being that contrarian and people saying like, oh, it's free speech. He can say whatever he wants. I don't think that there's going to be twofold with whatever the punishment is that comes out with Kyrie. There's going to be the people that said it wasn't hard enough. There needs to be a bigger statement made so that one, the NBA players aren't promoting conspiracy theories, and also they aren't speaking ill against people of a certain religion. And then on the other side, there's going to be people that are saying like, oh, he's allowed to be free speech. He's going to just bolster into that following that he's already developed. So sad thing happening in the NBA. Not sure what's the next chapter in this saga. I mean, the Nets just fired their head coach or parted ways with Steve Nash. So they're having on-court drama there as well. But it's just a mess. It's sad to see this happening in a league, especially like the NBA, where it feels like we've moved past so many of these things that shouldn't be a problem. And now they're in a problem, one of the most socially active associations in the entire world.
Yeah, this is just sad and crazy and sickening, actually. Also,
yeah.
Because this week in itself, we've had so many news. So much, should I say, news related to anti-Semitic remarks. First from Kanye, now from Kyrie, and I'm shocked alongside you, Tyler, that the NBA have not yet taken action. But I've noticed that when companies take a while to take action, that means they're trying to find the best way to do it, because when it comes, it's going to come hard and it's going to come fast.
I hope so, because I mean, this is just, you can't tolerate this. You can't just let this go by. At the same time, I would say too that if the NBA knew they were going to lay the hammer down or do something, they shouldn't have let him play in the past 2 or 3 games that he's been able to since he said those comments. He'd be like, hey, this is a temporary suspension. You can do the whole whatever happens with like police officers being like, oh, suspended without pay. Like, we're not letting you get in front of the public and have to defend yourself, and then we'll wait for us to determine what we're actually going to do to you. So he can't be upset because he's not getting he's still getting paid, just not playing basketball games. But that would kind of be the only thing. But I hope you're right, Kayla, and I hope that's kind of what's being moving forward, because right now it's just kind of seemed like everyone's kind of taking a back seat and just waiting to see what happened. I mean, he's the vice president of the NBA Players Association. So that's another wrinkle in all of this. He's one of the most prominent figures in the NBA. So how do you handle this is going to be, however they handle it, it's going to be talked about for years and years and years to come, just based off the manner that they did, good or bad or indifferent.
Exactly. I feel you. Well, continue to read on about that, people. But we have limited time here, so we can't dive super deep into it. Want to switch gears to a little more of a happier note. We are in game 4 of the MLB World Series.
Yes, so game 5's tonight. Game 4 happened last night. Series tied at 2-2. Oh my, this series took a turn last night.
It did, and it wasn't for the good. I kept saying Philly in 5. That was my goal. Philly in 5, and that was looking like Philly in 6.
You were looking so good there, Kayla, for a while. When they won game 3 with that, how it set up, I was like, oh no, Kayla might get this one right. But everything was being set up so beautifully for Philadelphia this series. Of course, as I predicted, they stole game 1 in Houston, and the Battle of the Aces, such a huge win for this team, which is the way the roster is constructed. And the pitching matchup favoring Houston, just being able to get Verlander early was such a big moment in this series. And then, of course, game 3 got postponed because of rain, so it gave the Philadelphia starters an extra day of rest. It was coming out perfectly. They won in game 3, and if you're a Philly fan, a dramatic and big way. But then when the Astros turned to their number 4 starter, the guy that you would think that like, oh, you know what, we've been hitting home runs every single game, let's continue it against the number 4 guy, the bats got silence. A combined no-hitter, just the second time in Major League Baseball history there's been a no-hitter in the World Series, the last one being over a half century ago with Don Larson. Javier was awesome. He's one of the best young pitchers and really going to be one of the future of the Astros organizations when he's able to get that moment. He's kind of been the reliever, long-term reliever, spot starter here and there. But this series, it's been all about the big hits. Phillies, they had 6 home runs in the first 3 games. The Astros only had, did I say hits? 6 home runs in the first 3 games, whereas the Astros only had 3 during that time span. It's actually funny when you look at the statistics and just the momentum of this series. It was all Philadelphia. You would think, you're looking at it, that like the pitchers are dominating, the bats are dominating, they're able to get all these runs. But if you look at the offensive stats, they actually slightly favor the Astros, which I think is a little bit disconcerting. Houston has 10 more hits than the Phillies do. Extra bases are relatively the same, but again, we just see such that discrepancy in home runs, so that's probably why we're getting it there. And the Phillies have struck out 11 more times than the Astros have. As a team, Philadelphia only has a 172 batting average, and that's not sustainable over the course of a long series. So they've been able to get the big hits. They've been able to get timely hits, which is huge. But these bats have to start stepping up in other ways that aren't just the long ball. They can't just keep chasing fastballs like Javier was able to get them last night, with them trying to get those home runs out of the park. They have to sometimes play the small ball. You have to be able to find a balance. If you look at the big 3 offensive weapons of Harper, Castellanos, and Realmuto, They're 9 for 46 in this series. Yes, we have the Harper home run, and they've been able to get some big hits and kind of the big stories of this game or this series, but they've struck out 21 times combined. You can't have your top guys going up to the batter's box and just not giving your offense a chance to score. So they have to step up. Bryce needs to step up and continue to do what he's done. It's the tenor of the series has just shifted dramatically because of that no-hit game. And I think, honestly, the fact that it's no-hitter may benefit the Phillies, and the fact of like, oh, we have to do more. We can't just rely that we're going to step up to the plate and be able to hit 1 or 2 home runs a game. We're going to have to, when we get a base runner on, whether it's a walk, whether it's a goofy single, we have to try and take advantage of it because every run is valuable. Every one hasn't been necessarily valuable for them this series. They haven't had to rely on that just because of how well they've been able to get the ball out of the park. But game 5 just starting right now. Verlander versus Syndergaard. Again, this is kind of the benefit of the rain pushing everything back. I know the kind of thought in Philadelphia was like, hey, all our pitchers are going to be set up very well after the rain happened for game 3 and game 4. So even if we're up in the series 3-1, game 5 can kind of be a little bit of a throwaway game. We kind of play funky because we just have Syndergaard out there, and then hopefully we can just bring Zach Wheeler for game 6 and really go for the win. But now Verlander versus Syndergaard, you have to think that heavily favors Verlander. Verlander pitched game 1. Wasn't that great for his standards. But I would also say at the same time, Syndergaard has had a phenomenal postseason so far. He hasn't pitched in nearly 2 weeks at this point, but he had a very solid postseason. His ERA is 1.69, so I think he will have a chance if he can match Verlander. We'll see. I think the goal for Syndergaard is try and get 4 to 5 innings, keep it a 1 or 2 run game early before handing off to the bullpen, because you can't have this game turn into one where the series is at 2-2. You don't want to go into game 6 where your bullpen is banged up. So Syndergaard needs to have an extended start in this one. Whether or not they win, I think is not the big issue, because you kind of knew this was going to be a throwaway game, but you want to try and keep this as close as possible. This isn't the one where we want the manager to kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So again, game 5 happening right now. Tomorrow's an off day. Saturday, game 6 of the series. It will be, no matter who wins tonight, it will be a clinching game potentially. And then if it goes to 7, they'll wrap it all up on Sunday.
I'm saying it's going to wrap on Saturday night. The Phils are going to take it home. I agree with you. It's going to be clinching, but I know that no-hit game last night put fire in their bellies and under their booties. So I think we're going to see a different Phillies tonight. We're going to see that Phillies from game 1, definitely them Phillies from game 3, and game 5 is going to be electrifying. That's just how I feel. That's just how I feel. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's the last game in Philadelphia. Last baseball game in Philadelphia until April next year. So this is the game to get after it. Get after Verlander early. He hasn't been the lockdown pitcher that we've expected over the years in the postseason. So get after him early. Don't let him get into a groove.
Exactly. And talking about getting people in the groove, our Philadelphia Unions found their groove last week, and they are on their way to win their first MLS Cup.
It is for the month of October and now the beginning of November have just been phenomenal to be a Philadelphia sports fan. You don't even care about the Sixers and the Flyers right now. You've just been locked into everything else going on. But yes, Philadelphia Union against LAFC. They're playing Saturday at 4:00 on Fox for the MLS Cup. Philadelphia, they in the Eastern Conference Final beat NYCFC 3-1. LAFC beat Austin 3-0. This is the number 1 seed versus the number 1 seed. 2 best teams in the MLS regular season squaring off here in the championship game. It may be boring for some people of how you were able to get here, but ultimately, as sports fans, as people that cover the sport, we want to see the best teams compete for the championship. We want to see the top 2 teams go at it and one team emerge victorious. But this is the first time, just to show kind of how crazy the MLS playoffs can be. This is the first time since 2023, or since 2003, 2003, that conference champions have made the MLS Cup together. So it's been a while since we've seen the top two teams make it. My opinion, you can look at this game in a variety of ways. We've talked about the dominance of the Union this season, how well they've played. They didn't win the Supporters Shield, but that's because LA won the Supporters Shield. Union led the MLS in goal differential, plus 46. They led them in goals against, with only allowing 26 on the year. And they had the fewest losses. So they had a lot of draws catch up against them, but they only lost 5 times this entire year. Whereas the flip side, LAFC won the Supporters Shield by having the most victories on the season with 21. These two teams are very evenly matched. I know how the Union aren't necessarily a possession-oriented team. LAFC is probably the most possession-oriented team we've had the Union play in this playoff. They're averaging 70 more passes a game than their opponents. They're averaging 10 plus more minutes of possession time than their opponents. So you're going to see LAFC have the ball a lot. But again, if you're a Union fan, you're used to this. You've seen this. They're able to earn a lot of set pieces. They're very smart with the ball. They don't turn it over too much. But Philadelphia, again, as we saw in the New York game, they win with their defense. They bring a lot of guys back, and then they just have so many talented strikers are able to go on both ends of the field and up the middle that they're able to take advantage of those one-on-one situations and get those transition goals. So take what you want. LAFC is the betting favorite at minus 135. So if you're a Philly fan and you think Union's going to pull it off, you got some great odds on being able to win some money if you're a betting person, as they are plus 320. So again, that's to be outright, no draw. I mean, obviously, if we get to PKs and extra time, that's going to be very interesting. But yeah, right now, top two teams at MLS, can't ask for much more.
I'm not a betting woman, but I can tell you the Unions are going to show out. I know that they are ready down there in LA. Well, over there in LA, Andre Blake, Bedoya, I think they have it. Some of the older players, as we saw in this past match last Saturday, came out, who hasn't been on the field lately. And that's when our 3 points hit. That's when our points hit. So I think if we just be smart and use some of our veterans as well as our rookies, I think, Tyler, we have a chance to clinch this thing for the first time.
Yeah, I think it's very evenly matched. I think, in my opinion, it's a toss-up. These two teams, there hasn't been a winner in this series between LAFC and Philadelphia since 2018. Every match since 2018, these two teams have drawn. So I hope we're going to have something very similar where it's very close. Comes down to maybe a play here or there in the final moments of the game, because that's what we love soccer to be. We want it to be a draw, and then in the final 10 minutes, we are able to get somebody breakthrough after a long possession-oriented game.
Exactly. All right, and our rest of our time here, let's switch it over to the NFL. So a lot of news coming out of the Commanders' court. So let's start there before we talk about Week 9.
I know we're running out of time, but if you remember 2 weeks ago when I discussed how it felt like things were kind of coming together, where there may be a reality not too far off, where Dan Snyder doesn't own the Washington Commanders. Well, if Jim Irsay's comments, which we talked about, were the parts to the car being delivered to the factory on the assembly line, the car's been put together, and now it's time to put that key in the ignition to see if it works. Yesterday, it was reported by Forbes that Dan Snyder has retained Bank of America Securities to potentially sell the Washington Commanders and to look into options for selling stakes in the team. The team confirmed this report. They say the organization is looking into future transactions. So that's big that they confirmed it. It's not just someone coming out and reporting it. And in that story, they said that Dan Snyder has received at least 4 calls from groups that are looking to buy the team. Again, they are exploring options to not only sell minority stakes in the team, but also potentially the entire team and the value that Dan Snyder and his family could be able to get out of it. This is huge. This is major news. This is something that ownership changes do not happen very often in professional sports unless there are controversies. And honestly, we thought Dan Snyder was going to be able to navigate himself through all these controversies. But now there are going to be potential options on the table that he and his family are considering, which is gigantic news. This is one of the most proud and biggest franchises in the NFL, even though they have not had success in the past 20 years. But the value of the team by Forbes is $5.6 billion, which is the sixth in the NFL. So Dan Snyder, it may be a situation if he's just tired of all this, he's ready to move on. He's like, I'm tired of dealing with all this media drama, because I guarantee you, once he leaves the team, all this drama is going to go away. Teams are, at least for him, he's not going to have to answer questions, face all these separate investigations that are going up against him. So this is huge, and especially with all the allegations and investigations that have happened over the past 10 years or so, Commanders fans in DC, they are extremely happy and ready to move on. That is for sure.
Oh, for sure. I know they are. This is extremely big news. I don't think I've ever seen a ownership of a team change hands, and just in my lifetime, at least not to my knowledge. But I'm happy for the Commanders.
In this manner, we haven't necessarily seen it in the NFL. Of course, there was the Donald Sterling situation back in 2014 when NBA basically told him he had to sell the team. The Jerry Richardson in Carolina happened around that same time too, when he was facing very similar allegations that Dan Snyder has with the bad work culture and sexual harassment. But it's just Dan Snyder's been one that's been so steadfast, basically going as far, he hasn't said it, but basically saying, you will pry this team away from my dead body because I am not going to sell. Like, he's as far, like, statements of like, I will never sell the team. He had a statement, like, I think it was off the ESPN report, basically saying how the NFL wants him gone, and the owners kind of are leaning that way as well. And the end of the statement was purporting that Daniel Snyder would sell the team, period, and he never will, period. This was like 2 months ago, less than that, 2 months ago, with them going as far to say that. So major news on that front. Of course, they have 6 active investigations on the team right now. Congress, Virginia Attorney General, DC Attorney General, the NFL is investigating him for financial improprieties. NFL and NPA are investigating them for prescription drug monitoring. The U.S. Attorney's Office, they've opened an investigation that came out last night. So they have a lot of what going on right now that's trying to hit the fan. And Dan Snyder, it may honestly be funding for them to try and find a new stadium, but many in DC are hoping that this is him being like, you know what, I'm done. It's time to move on. And for the fans' sake, they are hoping that as well.
For the fans' sake, I am hoping that as well. I really am. This is a lot of hitting the fan, and I don't think the Commanders need any more in their life.
No, they've had plenty of that the past 20 years. So
exactly. From one controversy to the next.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So let's get into week 9. We are here in week 9. Our Eagles are playing right now, but what else can we look forward to?
Yeah, so, I mean, last week I told you how most of those games were not very appealing to me. This week, kind of more the same, but there are some sneaky good games out there. Eagles, they just got to kind of get a win tonight against the Texans. The Texans, don't lose this game. Don't let your undefeated season come down to this game at all. Like, this should not be the case.
And honestly, in Houston, we can't lose. I'm sorry. Phillies is playing Houston. Eagles are playing Houston. Both Philadelphia teams need to win tonight. That's just how I feel.
Or at least get the split. At least have one happen. But, I mean, look at the Eagles' upcoming schedule. After tonight with the Texans, who have, one win on the season? They have the Commanders. They have the Colts. They have the Packers. This team may not lose for 4 or 5 weeks now. I mean, they have a very favorable schedule upcoming for them with teams that are in turmoil. We just mentioned the Commanders and what they're going through. The Colts have a new quarterback, Sam Ehlinger, making what would be his 3rd start, assuming he's still the starter at that point. The Packers and Aaron Rodgers are not the Packers that we know. And then they're going against the Titans in week 13. That's the next team that has a winning record that the Eagles have on their schedule. So this undefeated season may continue on for a very long time. Other games I'm looking for, there's a couple of sneaky good games out there that don't necessarily look at it right away. Chargers versus Falcons is one I'm looking at. You could easily say the Chargers are slightly underperforming and the Falcons are overperforming this season. Well, they're playing against each other, so it's time to see necessarily who is going in the right directions. Falcons have a great opportunity to make the playoffs with Marcus Mariota, which I don't think many people anticipated this year. We also have the Dolphins and the Bears, another one. Justin Fields finally has that Chicago offense looking pretty good. Scored 33 against New England, scored 29 against one of the best defenses in the league with the Cowboys. They're going against the Dolphins, who have been a really inconsistent team this year. That could end up being a shootout. And if you're the Bears and you're able to steal a win there in Miami, again, NFC is not great. They could also be setting themselves up for a path to make a playoff push. Those are the two that I have on my kind of radar. A lot of teams have a bye week this week. My Cowboys have a bye week, 49ers, Broncos, Steelers, Giants, and Browns. So a lot of teams are off. Of course, the Chiefs versus Titans Sunday night. That's an exciting game to watch. Ravens versus Saints. That's also an important game to watch. It doesn't necessarily have the star power that you would expect just because the NFC is just so weird this year. I mean, Andy Dalton's the quarterback of the Saints, and they're just shut out the Raiders last week. Raiders didn't score a single point. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. A little bit more exciting than next week, but we have some big matchups coming up in the upcoming schedule that I think a lot of people will be interested in. Enjoy the World Series this weekend. I'll just say
that. Well, is that our game of the week? Because we definitely have to get to that and our MVP.
Yeah, game of the week. I'm going to game 6 of the World Series. I don't know what's happening tonight. Houston could be up 3-2. Philly could be up 3-2 when it's all said and done. But regardless, game 6 on Saturday, somebody is going to have a chance to raise the Commissioner's Trophy and win the World Series. So that's why I have that as my game of the week, 8:30 or 8:03 on Fox Saturday night. If they make it to, if somehow it goes 7, game 7 will be my game of the week 2.0. So that one would be on Sunday, same time, 8:03 on Fox as well.
Awesome. And who was our MVP this week?
Mr. A.J. Brown, you cost me a win in fantasy football this week. I had Jalen Hurts, and I thought I was doing great, and I looked to see what my opponent is doing. Oh my gosh. Get this. 6 catches for A.J. Brown, 156 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That is not supposed to happen on a week in, week out basis, and yet A.J. Brown continues to do it. I don't know what he did to piss off the Titans front office last offseason to not pay this man, but now we get to talk about on a weekly basis here with the Philadelphia Eagles. It was just not fair. I'm not happy with him right now, but I got to give props where props is due. MVP of the week goes to A.J. Brown.
Oh, for sure. Mr. Brown is doing his job, for sure. He is doing his job. Well, Tyler, thank you so much as always for coming to talk sports with us right here on CrossWURDz from the press box. Can't wait to watch game 6. I do not think it's going past game 6, and that's just what I'm predicting. It is not going past game 6 for the Phils. I think next time you see me, Philadelphia would have won 2 titles, and I just can't wait to brag on it.
I don't know if the sports world can handle Philadelphia winning 2 sports titles in the span of what would be 2 days.
It would be in the span of 2 hours because the MLS Cup is on Fox right before the World Series.
This is true. I don't think the sports world can handle it. I don't know. I might not see you next week, Kayla. So you have to let me know if you're able to get out alive.
Right. I that is just my prediction for this week, and I think it's going to be great. Again, Tyler, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on CrossWURDz. Listen, everybody, we have to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, Danae and I will continue to put a bow on this show. You're tuned into CrossWURDz right here on WURD, Progressive Black Talk.